Okay, another L for the Shroud believers. Big discovery reveals that we've been debunking the Shroud for 650 years, since right when it was created, basically. So what is this? Let's show you. From Newsweek, published a few days ago. This is a big deal. A newly discovered medieval document has revealed that the authenticity of the Shroud was being called into question as early as 1355, perhaps as early as 1355. The text analyzed by the Journal of Medieval History has been dated between 1355 and 1382. It reveals that respected Norman theologian Nicole Oresme, who would become the Bishop of Lisieux, France, dismissed the Shroud as a quote, clear and patent fake, the result of deceptions by clergymen. His writing, now considered the oldest writing rejection of the relic, predate the previous early documented criticism by the Bishop of Troyes in 1389. The bishop also rejected the Shroud as a fraud and reported that the predecessor of his had done likewise in around 1355. Found by a renowned historian. So now we have an even earlier record of another Christian bishop saying that the Shroud is a fake. Okay, I tweet this, and then this Orthodox guy comes in, definitely shares his tweet right away in one of their OrthoBro group chats and says, all studies, quote unquote. Okay, so I share an article that talks about a bishop, another bishop, Christian, saying that it's a fake. Right around the same time that it was carbon dated to. And this Orthodox guy doesn't even read the article, just comes in, knee-jerk reaction, says all studies, quote unquote, debunking it are run by Jews, and there's currently an active $1 million bet to recreate the Shroud. If it is fake, recreate it. Yeah, I'm sure your Christian apologist that has whatever offer is not going to pay out $1 million because it already has been recreated. And I'm going to show you that in a second here. He didn't even read it. He just knee-jerk dismissed this as a Jewish study when it's actually a Christian saying it's a Jewish forgery. The cope is unreal. And your whole argument, no proof, by the way, for this, that all of the studies, all the universities that radiocarbon dated it to 12 to 1300s, they're all Jews. It's all a Jewish conspiracy. Meanwhile, all the Jews everywhere are promoting Jesus. All the hardcore Zionist platforms are all promoting Jesus. Meanwhile, if you want to say, it's Jews that are trying to debunk it, in reality, the top proponent of the Shroud's authenticity is a guy named Barry Schwartz, an Orthodox Jew, who has the TED Talk, The Shroud and the Jew. Top proponent, Orthodox Jew, spends much of his time educating Christians that the Shroud may be a real artifact of Jesus. Since 1978, that one of the top proponents of the Shroud. Do you see how ridiculous? It's just like lies and version of reality and cope. Good video, The Shroud Fraud, how the Shroud of Turin deceived. I kind of want to watch that. Just recently, there was a 3D analysis revealing that the Shroud of Turin likely came from a sculpture, not Jesus's body. 3D imaging. We covered in the last stream. If something was cloaked over him, it would not look like how it looks. They did it with a low relief. Oh, what is this? Click to accept marketing cookies and enable this content. Let's see this real quick.
When you wrap a 3D object with a fabric and that object leaves a pattern, like blood stains, these stains...
This is the Brazilian guy. I did look up the name, though, the last name, and it could be Sephardic, actually, so I'm not going to say this guy might not be Jewish. I doubt he's raised Jewish or identifies as Jewish, but I'm just going to throw it out there, a possibility. But so what? Even if he were 100% Jewish and had the biggest nose of all time, can you refute this argument and this evidence and this actual science?
Robust and more deformed. When you wrap a 3D object with a fabric and that object leaves a pattern, like blood stains, these stains generate a more robust and more deformed structure in relation to the source. So, roughly speaking, what we see is a result of a printing stance from a human body would be more
Low relief.
swollen and distorted version.
See, it wasn't a real, this is so good. Not a real human, get this out of the way. Not a real human body, but a low relief, which we're going to show you the Smithsonian did a recreation of it with the low relief. If fabric was really wrapped around a face, it would look more something like this.
Version of it, not an image that looks like a photocopy. A bas-relief, however, wouldn't cause the image to deform.
Orthodox Luigi is just like, no, wrong.
Jew, guilty, you're a Jew, doesn't matter.
Nope, no argument. I'm just going to call everybody that doesn't believe in the Shroud a Jew. Everybody that doesn't bow down to Jesus is a Jew. You guys are so tiresome, so unserious.
In a figure that resembles a photocopy of the body. Any careful adult can test it at home, for example, by painting your face with some pigment liquid using a large napkin or...
That's him. This is who he's saying is a Jew. No, it's a Jew trying to debunk it. That's not real.
Paper towel or even fabric and wrapping
it's just a satanic Jew that doesn't want me to worship the king of the Jews. Be a Noahide.
Around your face. Then take the fabric out, spread it on a flat surface, and see the resulting image. This deformation as
They'll just be like, well, Jesus is magic. Everything's shot directly straight up, just like a painting. Like, come on, bro.
As the mask of Agamemnon effect, as it resembled that ancient artifact.
Okay. And let's see. Shoot, where's my other video of it? Another L for the Shroud believers. Hold on, maybe I'll find my quote tweet here. No, I quote tweeted him. Let's see this. Oh, Barry Schwartz. Oh, we kind of went through this already. Everybody talking about Barry Schwartz, the Cope. Why don't you apply that same logic to Barry Schwartz, the Jew that's the top proponent of this? Or Glenn Beck or Tucker Carlson, all these kosher guys promoting the Shroud everywhere. Okay, I got to do this. Quote tweet. I quote tweeted him. I said, that's patently false. The top proponent is Jewish, though, and it has been recreated. Double L. Let's watch the recreated video again. These guys asked for it. Hold on. Oh, nobody could ever recreate it. It's way too complex. They did the new study that was total bunk, too, recently, that was using an X-ray scattering device to see the deterioration of the threads, which is complete bollocks, complete nonsense, way too many variations, like how the thread was produced, how it was stored. There's so many variables, and they timed it out so it's exactly at 2,000 years. This is not at all a proven method of dating fabrics. So Cope. The article, I want to play a little bit of this one. I haven't seen. All right, let's see here. I want to see a little bit of this guy doing the study.
And then come forward a number of image formation series. I'm not going to waste a lot of time on this, but just to give you the basics of Christ, because they are really dark. So they read as being... Also, each fiber that has been affected is only stained on the outside. If you break a fiber, it's white inside and discolored on the outside. Again, suggesting...
So if the Christians are right and he really burst out with a light of a million gigameters of electromagnetic, whatever the guy was saying on Tucker Carlson, whatever goy slop he was pushing... It would go all the way through the fibers. It's only on like the top layer of the fibers.
That whatever caused this came from outside. If you look at the image and you put it through a computer enhancement program, you can three-dimensionalize the image. You cannot do that with a normal photograph. If you take a photograph, a snapshot, and you put it through a computer, it's not going to work, because normally in a photograph, you only have one light source from one angle. Okay? For some reason, the Shroud image out of the foot in a zigzag motion. And there are lots of these zigzags all over the place.
Oh.
Zigzags on the arm, a zigzag out of the wound in the wrist.
Painting it, huh?
And zigzags
Painting on the blood.
On the blood.
They're like, it's got real postmortem blood and other blood. Like, you could get blood. It's not impossible for somebody to get some blood. They were bloodletting probably at this time. They could poke their finger, drip out some blood, and pour it on there. Come on.
Across the back.
Not impressed.
That tells you very clearly this was made by a human being using some form of paintbrush. And yes, it might be blood. Blood's quite easy to get hold of. I don't doubt for a moment that that's real blood.
Exactly.
But whether it's pig blood or cow blood or chicken blood or human blood, we know it's hemoglobin.
Oh, we don't even know if it's
hemoglobin
human
as
blood.
it is now. And they possibly put, thanks to Walter Macrone's work, which was highly objective, he suspects that there may be red ochre in the blood, and I think he's right. Normally doesn't retain its nice red coloring. The fact that this methemoglobin, dried methemoglobin blood, still has quite a strong red tinge to it suggests strongly that there's red ochre mixed with it. Now, obviously, blood already contains iron, so it's just basically a matter of enhancing the iron content with a little bit of red ochre, and the result is blood that stays more or less red. Very simple. Okay, I'm going to come back to the blood because there's another issue about the blood, which is very rarely mentioned, and that is that the blood has a halo effect. You will notice that in a lot of the places where there's blood, there's like a pale glowing area around the blood, which has given rise to the belief that the blood came first and the image afterwards. And as I will show you, that is completely wrong. Okay, clues to a solution.
Okay, here we go.
The Shroud image behaves like a photographic negative. Okay?
You talk so
You
slow.
cannot make a photographic negative by painting, and you can't make it by magic. And I'm ruling out miracles here because I don't believe in them. Photographs are caused by photographic-related technologies. Okay, photographic-related technologies. That means you can only make a photographic image if you have some chemical that is affected by light and changes its characteristics such that it may, and then be fixed, that it may then record what was projected onto it.
Give me the blood, Lord. I thought the
lenses,
same
mirrors,
thing.
whatever, but I'm not here at this point saying what. But it has to be done with a photographic-related technology. There's no other way to make a photograph except by using photography of some kind. And photography is a very loose term here. It includes any means of capturing light. Okay? The official date for the invention of photography is 1799. The people who made the first photograph used silver nitrate. This back in the 1720s. And they used to hide the image in a dark room, and you could only look at them with a candle. And if you took the image out into the sunlight, it went brown because they didn't know how to fix. So fixing a photograph was a major step. And I speak under correction, but I think it was the 1820s when the first fixed photograph was produced. So if you know all this, and you know that the Shroud is exhibiting photographic qualities, then the question for me is obvious. What photographic-related techniques or technologies were present in 1250 to 1350? Which are the dates that I believe
So how
the
did
Shroud
they
was
make
made
it
in? And
as
I
a
do that based
negative?
on the artistic evidence.
With a negative relief?
It has to have been made after 1250 because it is part of the age of humanism, as I tried to explain so carefully. It's part of Louis IX's way of the cross. It is part of a post-Crusader period. It is an attempt to make a relic and an icon in one object. It is both Latin West and Greek-speaking East combined in one artifact. It's a very clever product. It could only have come from this time period. We know for a fact that it was around in 1351. It may have been around earlier, but it's doubtful it was around before 1250, because if it was, then the person who made it must have been a prophet who could see the future. And I don't believe in prophets, and I don't believe that people can see the future. So the problem is it possible for anybody to have made this in the Middle Ages? And of course, most people would just say no and walk away. But I realized that there's lots of evidence for something related to photography at this period, to camera obscura, for example, pinhole images, lenses, light-sensitive chemicals, and image-fixing techniques. The last two are the problem here. You may remember this little maxim: when you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Mr. Spock, okay? Okay, I hope you're having a laugh now. Now let's go on to Holmes' maxim. It's an old maxim of mine that when you have excluded the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable...
I tried watching the beginning of this and couldn't get through it, and they said he gets to the actual meat of it at the last 2/3, but I'm going to lose
must be the truth.
patience.
That's where Spock got it from. Okay, so if you go back in time, roughly 10th century, we have people of the caliber of Al-Hatham, who wrote text explaining how you could make an image inside a camera with a pinhole. And what he did was he put a candle outside a box, and then inside the box he observed that the candle was visible upside down. And below is a color picture showing you that principle. Al-Hatham was a very clever man. He also worked out that light travels in straight lines. He's the first person to do that. This is centuries before Newton. Before this time, everybody thought that light mingled. Al-Hatham put 3 candles in a row and then snuffed out the lights one by one to see what happened inside the camera. And he noticed that the opposite light went out every time he snuffed a candle out, proving that light travels in perfectly straight lines. He went further than this. He also worked out how binocular vision worked. He worked out why the moon appears large on the horizon. And he also worked out how rainbows were formed.
Wow.
Now, following Al-Hatham's example, if you have an object illuminated by light on the left, standing next to an aperture or a hole, say in the wall of a large room, inside the room you will get an inverted image of what was outside the room.
Where is he going with
But it will be made up of a series of holes, basically, so you have a blurred image. Okay, so we talk about the object conjugate distance and the image conjugate distance. This is a self-working phenomenon. You don't need any fancy tools to do this. If you put a lens in that hole and focus the light, then the image on the right becomes focused and is as sharp as the original object that was standing outside. Al-Hatham worked this out in the 10th and 11th centuries. Using the sun as an example, he used a triangular aperture and proved that the image of the sun that passes through the aperture is made up of a series of triangles, and hence it was blurred. So the only way we can do this is have lenses. And lenses go way back.
I've heard that the lens in our eye actually views the world upside down and our brain reverses it. You guys heard that before?
They found lenses in Troy. They found lenses in Mycenae. I'm from a telescope. I have molds of lenses that were found in Tanis, dated to 150 CE. Both lenses are plano-convex, and if you put them together, you can actually project an image with them.
Oh my God!
They also
Where
found,
is he going with this?
That's 300 years before the Shroud was made.
Lenses. Okay, he's proving that lenses
We
existed.
have no written evidence that anybody knew why
light-sensitive chemicals and lenses.
Cloth, and you have an accurate image.
Okay,
So the hypothesis sulfate,
this
which is
is
changing
another
color.
way of making.
We have to wait for Boyd much later to explain that this is by light.
This guy is
in
a
his early days, they probably thought it was weather or moisture. The Chinese were way ahead of the Europeans. They were making motion pictures as early as 180 CE. Here we have a zoetrope, which is basically a circle with figures on. Normally, in this case, it would have been dancing ponies or dragons. And then the light inside is looked at through a slit by the eye, and you can see the illusion of somebody running or walking. And it was exactly this that gave me the clue as to how the Shroud was made. When I realized what the findings were from Stirp, and with my knowledge of medieval technology and optics, which is something that I study, I realized that the only way you're going to make an image of a man on a flat piece of cloth is to project the image with light. And that is actually photography. So here we have, on the left, we have a piece of cloth wrapped around the head, and you can see you make a blurry image, and on the right, you project the image onto the cloth, and you have an accurate image. So the hypothesis at this stage was that they took a man, suspended him in the sun, opposite a window, with a lens in it, which had been boarded up. The light that reflected off of his body went through the lens onto a piece of cloth that had been soaked previously in a silver salt, and the result is that you get an inverted image. In the early 80s, I started my experiments, and with the help of an optometric expert at CSIR, I eventually realized that the only way I could make this image was by using crystal. I tried glass and it didn't work. And then one day I got hold of a lens made out of optical quartz, and in my early experiment, I put up this white plaster bust of a friend of mine by the name of Glenn Mayer. He's actually a very well-known photographer here in Port Elizabeth. And the camera was focused on this head. So the morning light would come up and shine on it, and then the light would pass over the head. At noon, the light would be fully in his face, and in the afternoon, the light would move to the other side of his face. I did this for 3 days. So the actual image inside, the player who took a photograph of my next step, this is about 1992, we have a plaster Paris corpse, and we hung it up. And by now, I had a whole lot of silver quartz lenses made for the various purposes. The one on the right is the one I used for a full-length figure. That has a focal length of something like 4 meters, which means that the figure has to be 4 meters from the lens. And there you can see clearly the figure hanging up. And on the corner of the camera obscura is the lens. Inside the camera has a lens,
the best
there's a corpse, and there's sunlight. That's what you need. If you go inside the camera, you can see the lens on the right in the corner. And there is the shroud stretched onto a frame. My safe lights are just candles, because candles can't affect the silver assault. So you need a shroud. Made out of, it can be made out of linen or cotton or a mixture, doesn't matter. Any ester will do, even paper will work. You need an easel of some kind to stretch it, and you need safe lights so that you can work in the dark. And that is what you see inside the camera, okay? So whatever's outside the camera, inside is upside down and focused. Right, so there we have, we pretend we're inside the camera and we're looking at my screen. We're standing basically next to the lens, looking into the camera at the image upside down on a piece of cloth that's been impregnated with silver sulfate. And on the right, that's what you get after 3 days.
Wow.
Then you turn the cloth around, you turn the figure around, hanging up, and you now expose the next section. So there's the corpse turned around, and inside the camera, there's the corpse upside down, 8 meters away, focused on the cloth. And that's what you get after 1 day, 2 days, and
wow.
That's the front image, and that's it compared to the Shroud of Chambéry. I've taken away the train tracks.
Wow, that's
so
how
that
you
can
get
have a
the
better comparison.
negative
Because obviously my Shroud hasn't been in a
Look at
fire.
that.
So the only difference between these two images really is the fact that my Shroud doesn't have blood on it. The image is what I'm interested in here at this stage. There are differences, of course. The one problem is I don't have the original corpse. The second problem is my lens is probably much better than what they had in the Middle Ages. There are distortions on the cloth, on the image on the cloth. The head is 10% too small for the body. I wonder how many of you have noticed that the head is too small. The front version of the Shroud image is different in length to the back version of the image, which means that these exposures were done at different times.
Wow.
It might not even be the same body for the back and front. It might be that they used a real corpse and it started to disintegrate, it started to decay, and after 3 days they threw it away and used a fresh body. Anything is possible here. They may have mummified the body. They may have made a mold of the body. But given that corpses were pretty plentiful at that time, I'm quite sure that mummifying it would have probably been the easiest. I suspect very strongly that the head was made with a separate exposure, with a different lens, and then after they had captured the head, they then did the body without a head, and then the two were basically fit together like that. That would have taken about 6 days to achieve that image. So you compare the two images, and just as a matter of detail, I put a cut on the chest of my figure to see if it would come out in the reversed polarity, and you can clearly see the cut under the nipple. That's how accurate it is.
Wow.
This was the Shroud of Port Elizabeth, a beautiful, beautiful shroud, which unfortunately no longer with us. The front body, beautifully made, and then joined at the head with the reverse. This is now in the state before fixing. What you're looking at here is mostly the silver atoms that are giving that discoloration. If this had been fixed, the image would be much paler and not visible unless you move about 2 meters away from it. These are some examples of the models that I use in my experiments. I use flesh-colored and white-colored models to play around with what happens inside the camera, different lenses to see what effects I can get. One of the things I am trying to do at the moment is to ratiocinator the exact dimensions of the lens that was used back in roughly 1350. To do that is going to be quite a mission, because I have to work out the spherical aberrations on the lens, the figure on the shroud.
Hey, come on.
That's what it looks like in black and white. And that's what it looks like compared to the Shroud image.
Dude, it's done. $1 million. Give this guy $1 million. Oh, the Christian will be like, no, it's not exactly. You didn't do this. Like, why not? Give him $1 million. Right? Somebody needs to submit this. Nicholas, you should submit this to this $1 million challenge that these Christians are so impressed by. And collect your reward.
And then obviously differences. The differences are explained, A, by the fact that my lens is perfect. B, the similarities are really interesting. You'll notice that I've got lines wiggling all over my image. Those are lines caused by no image appearing, because the cloth that I used had to be heated up and washed in a washing machine to remove starch. When people make material, they put starch into it, and starch resists the silver salt. Because the silver salt was not, the starch was not washed out.
Nobody can recreate it. Nobody's impossible. Even modern science can't do it. I saw some Christian grifter say it on YouTube. That's what these guys do.
Particular places to reduce. And when the thing was dipped in ammonia, you simply end up with a blank piece of cloth. Okay? Now, similarly, you'll notice two black lines on either side of the head. That is a self-working phenomenon. That is because the sides of the head are always in shadow. So very little silver reduces in those areas. Interestingly enough, the Shroud image has exactly the same issue, which strongly suggests this is how they did it.
Lines?
I don't know how anybody can doubt it.
From the side?
And it's been emphasized by the fact that the woof threads. Now, the material is made on woof.
So they haven't only been able to recreate it in one way, but in this way too. And I think this way is actually much closer. This is very compelling. the sides of the face not reflecting as much to mess with the salts that they put on there. That's very telling, right?
Weft.
So
Woof and
over.
weft
It's
threads. The
cooked.
woof is put in first. They are strongly starched, okay, to make them stronger. And then the weft is put in sideways from left to right. I suspect that when they put the silver salt onto the shroud cloth before they exposed it, they hadn't got all the starch out of the woof, and that is why the image is not so pronounced on either side of the face. It is quite obvious. You can see it. It's almost like a ruler. Straight line, and it goes throughout the whole cloth. If you look at a photograph of the entire Shroud of Turin, that line runs through the entire image, proving what I'm saying. One of the criticisms I get from people is, you cannot be right because you haven't made exactly the same as the Shroud of Turin. And I say to them,
A lot of sense. Okay, you're like, oh, he may be debunking, but he's anti-white. Dude, who cares? Nothing this guy says about anything has anything to do with it. It's like, do we not know how to address arguments?
you're not looking at this correctly. I'm trying to find a valid explanation for how somebody may have made it in the Middle Ages with the technology that I had. I'm trying to be objective here. People have accused me of being fanciful, that they're saying I'm trying to prove that they had fountain pens in the Middle Ages and all sorts of other nonsense. That is not what I'm doing. And to try to illustrate my problem, let us imagine that there was only one painting in the world, and it was the Mona Lisa. And here it is, the Mona Lisa in the Louvre. And people didn't know about painting. And let's say that to try to prove a technique, somebody painted the Laughing Cavalier to prove that it's possible to make an image using paint. Then the cynics will say, oh, well, it's not the same because the Mona Lisa doesn't have a moustache. And that is basically the problem that I have at the moment. So let me end there. Was that okay? Could you understand what was going on? Yeah.
I do, and very convincing.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I just don't see any other way of doing it. I mean, I've all sort of mirrors, but it's much simpler to use a lens. Why use a mirror when you use a lens?
Hello,
I
viewers.
just realized that's the guy that also he wrote the book, The Jesus Fallacy, the greatest lie ever told. I watched a little bit of one of his things. So he's allowed to say it's a lie. Jesus is a lie, but I'm not. I'm evil and bad if I say it's a mythical lie created by Jews. Is that the way things are?